This sector is 100 billion turnover per year. Everything about what it means to work for a business, forget it. I did not sell a single pound of the 250 million via LinkedIn messaging somebody.
Meet Andrew Hulbert.
I started a business when I was 26. I managed to sell that for about $100 million when I was 37, and I've been retired for the last couple of years, and I'm now trying to tell the story.
There was no playbook.
I didn't even know what university was when I was 16 because no one in my family had been before.
He built and sold a 9-figure business.
The art of good sales is taking...
And now he's here to share his secrets.
And the other bit of advice is once you find your first client, but when I went to sell that to Netflix, to Facebook, to Deliveroo, to ASOS, you would have thought it was £1 million contract, but it didn't matter because it was the name Twitter. Now I ask any entrepreneur out there, for £20,000, would you want 10 million of revenue to come back in?
Andrew, thank you so much for joining us. For anyone that doesn't know you, can you tell us about yourself in a few words?
I started a business when I was 26. I managed to sell that for about $100 million when I was 37. And I've been retired for the last couple of years. And I'm now trying to tell the story.
When you started this when you were 27, what made you think that you could pull this off?
I think, like with most entrepreneurs, I'm not sure when I started, I'm not sure I knew what I was aiming for. I knew I needed to run my own business because I couldn't work for anybody else. I'd gone to university and gone into a small company, which I loved, but we then got bought out by a much bigger organization. And I did 2 years for them and I just hated it. I hated having a boss and a structure and a process. So it was my only option, really, to go and do it myself. And I didn't want to wake up when I was 40 and think, oh gosh, should have taken my chance at that stage.
But there are quite a lot of things that you don't consider when you start your own business. At least I didn't. Yeah. But you said you grew up in the working class. How does one build the ambition and the confidence to dream big and break the pattern of that environment that you were raised in?
I grew up seeing my mum and dad working incredibly hard for very low wages. So my mum was in a supermarket and my dad was in a factory for like 30 to 40 years between them. So I grew up and I was earning money from the age of 12 myself, working on the weekends. I didn't want that life for myself. I could already see from an early age that that wasn't going to be the life for me. I didn't want to go through this curve where I went to, got a job, got an apprenticeship, worked for 50 years, got my pension and then died. That wasn't my plan for my life. And my parents are amazing and hugely supportive. And without them, I wouldn't be here today. But I didn't want that life for myself. So I had an ambition very young that I was going to do something different. And I felt with the drive and the upstart nature of being like a young man, I thought I could do it. So I used that as my motivation and it really drove me on. But I wanted to get off that curve as early as I could because I didn't want to be working until I was 70 and then maybe live 5 years of life and then die. So I was really conscious of that. Even as like a 10-year-old, I knew that's what I was going to do.
And I also think that that is very strongly linked to a mindset. So do you think that there are particular mindset tricks that people can implement in order to aim to build a 7-figure business?
Yeah, mindset for me is about having a plan, but also understanding that the plan can change. So there's a bit of a mixture of both things. Firstly, have a plan. What are you aiming for? So when I started Pareto, my goal was to get to 20 million. I didn't know how long it was going to take me to get there, but I called it the Premier League. So I was like, okay, using a football analogy, I know that I'm starting this business today. I am already going to think like a £20 million business, and one day we're going to get there. Now, I made plans around how we would do that. And to be honest, we just smashed all those plans completely out of the water. And being a good entrepreneur is also about adapting when good and bad things happen. So mindset-wise, write it down. Have a plan, write it down, but understand that that plan will only get you to a certain point, and you need to be intelligent enough to pivot as different opportunities come towards you. The other mindset thing is, if something's not working, accept it is not working. It's not you, it's not the business. The universe is just not ready for you to do that at the moment. Be agile and go and focus on something else. Because many entrepreneurs, I think, they get focused on one particular thing and they keep hammering and hammering and hammering, and it's just not working. And then they start asking existential questions like, is this for me? Am I a real entrepreneur? Is it going to work? Yes, you are, but pivot away from that and do something else. So when times are good, redo your plan. When times are bad, redo your plan, but have a plan in the first place.
You also mentioned that you started having the mindset of you already had the 20 millions. That was in your mind. How do you put yourself in the position of you knowing that you already have it? How does one just make the actions and live as you already have it?
It's really about what's in here. So I talk about the soul. I'm not spiritual or religious, but I believe in the soul and the inner voice that we have. I just believed from the beginning that we were good enough to do that. But also it's an entire mindset thing, because let's just say I believe we're already a £20 million business. Now, if I go for an opportunity and I see a client that I may be able to work with, if I didn't have that £20 million mindset, I go, well, maybe that's not for us. We're too small. But it wasn't that. It was the other way around. I was like, oh, that's only £1 million a year contract. We're a £20 million business already. Let's go for it. Now, you see how those who think they can and those who think they can't are usually right. It's that scenario. Now, look, I absolutely understood we weren't a £20 million business, but if you have the right focus and mindset to try and get there, I think it opens up more opportunities. But I go back to what I said. You have to accept rejection. At the beginning, you get more no's than you do yeses, because people say you're too small, you have no credit history, you have no case studies, you have no examples. But that's when you just need to keep trying even harder. And the other bit of advice is, once you find your first client and you actually have a case study to talk about, just take that story and go and tell that story to everybody else. And the art of good sales is taking a very small piece of the truth and then extrapolating that and making it actually bigger than what it is. And like our third contract that we won was Twitter. Now, Twitter, in say £1 million business we had by that stage, was a £24,000 a year contract. But when I went to sell that to Netflix, to Facebook, to Deliveroo, to ASOS, you would have thought it was £1 million contract. But it didn't matter, because it was the name Twitter. And it was like in 2017, it was one of the best places to be. So I just think that you can take very small wins and extrapolate them into something much bigger. But also just be prepared for rejection, because that is going to happen. It's not you. Everybody is in that same boat.
And I think that is really what builds you up eventually. And especially if you're trying to become a good entrepreneur, you're going to have to make peace with the fact that you're going to hear a lot of no's, especially at the beginning. And speaking about the beginnings, the first 5 years in business, we are told that they are the ones that make you tougher, that make you better, not the ones that necessarily make you richer. Can you tell me a lesson that you learned during these years that prompted the success of your company?
Yeah, look, the first 5 years, we didn't make any money. Personally, I didn't make any money. I think by year 5, I was still paying myself similar to what I paid myself from the very beginning. We only really made money when we went through our exits and we started to make more profitability. What I learned in those first 5 years, I was going to hold the business back if I continued to micromanage everything myself. I was your typical entrepreneur where I didn't feel anybody could do it better than I could. So if it was finance, I did it. If it was marketing, if it was social media, if it was pitching, if it was writing, whatever, I did it. Me. Now, whilst that's okay for controlling quality, there's only so far one person can go. And actually, once that person's at 110% capacity, which I always was, you start to restrict the business. And one of the best decisions we made in about year 6 to 7, we invested nearly £1 million into our overhead team so that I could take a step back from what we were doing. And it was from there that we got to about 18 million or so at that stage turnover. It's from that point that we then went from 32 to 42 to 50 in like a 3-year period. So that was because I'd stopped doing everything. I'd stopped being the bottleneck. I'd got over myself as an entrepreneur that other people should also be allowed to do things. Now, when you're hyped up and you're in it and you're just sort of like every minute of the day is about grow and deal with it, it's sometimes hard to take a step back and understand that that's what's doing. And you hear this phrase also, you should work on your business, not in your business. That's what people say. I was absolutely in it, probably for the first 8 or 9 years in reality. But the moment I was able to take a step back, bring other people in, that's what the first 5 years taught me. And the truth is, had I have done that in year 3, instead of maybe like year 7 or 8, we probably could have gone even quicker and maybe even bigger. And that was a really important lesson.
That is very true. And I sat down with quite a few entrepreneurs at this point, and everyone says the same thing. And it's quite a difficult step to take back, because when you build a business, it's like your baby, right? You spend all of your time and energy and you're really trying to make it work. And at some point it starts working.
Yeah.
But exactly as you said, the first thing that you do is restrict your business from growing. And then it's like sending your child to high school, right? You need to let it go. You need to make sure that other people can also take care of your baby, and it will grow better. But I think this is a very, very important moment when you choose your A players.
Yes.
So speaking of challenges, I recognize this is a main one. Would you say during your time at Pareto, was this the biggest challenge that you faced?
Yeah, look, we were a really fast growth business. So like we were growing some years 300%. I think in year 7 to 8, we grew 77%. So you're talking about even 7 or 8 years in, still nearly doubling in size on an annual basis. So growth is very challenging because, of course, with growth, you need to hire good people. You need great processes. You need good cash terms, because don't ever forget about cash. We can sit here and talk about profit, but as you get bigger and you win bigger clients and bigger opportunities, their cash terms are rubbish generally. And like, whilst early on, I was able to negotiate a few quarterly in advance payment terms, which was unheard of in our sector, but I was able to negotiate it. As you got bigger and the bigger opportunities, they were like 90-day payment terms. So your working capital just shifts really significantly. So as you grow quickly, but the key and the antidote is people, exactly as you just said. So for me, I had 15 senior leaders in the business by the end. And in the 10 years that I ran the business for, we didn't lose a single senior leader in that time. So everybody that I hired came on the journey with us. Now, I was very, very deliberate in how much time I spent on the interview process and understanding, why do you want to come and work for me? I always like to turn things round. I don't care about the CV. CV's gone. I literally do not care. Let's just have a chat. Go out and have like a burger or have a coffee or whatever and have a chat. I always always say, what is your motivations? What are you giving up? Why are you going to come and work for me? When I make you stay late on a Friday night, what is it you're not doing at home because I'm giving you a hard time? When I call you on a Saturday, what is it that you are not able to do because I'm making that call? And on 15 occasions, we got that right. And actually, that senior management team is the absolute strength of what we did. So although growing fast is challenging because you're always trying to keep up, if you focus on an amazing team and you pick the right people and you put a lot of effort into that team, and hiring people was one of my superpowers, they just managed it for us.
How did you learn how to spot the people? You said that's your superpower. So how do you learn how to spot the right people, and how do you make them stay?
I'm not sure I have the exact answer. For me, it is about person to person. It's take away all the corporate shit that we've learnt, everything about what it means to work for a business. Forget it. Actually, that is not, it is human to human. What bond are we going to have with each other that is going to outlast anything that can happen within business? And that didn't mean I always hired people that I liked, because that wasn't always the case. I hired people that were going to do what was right for the business and fit into the culture. The other mantra that we live by was, we don't employ dickheads. So like famously, Deliveroo was one of our early customers. And in Deliveroo, on the wall of Cannon Street, it used to say, give a shit. And we really loved that sort of philosophy with Deliveroo. So we came up with our own, which was, we don't employ dickheads. So when I was sort of interviewing these people and getting to know them a bit better, I was trying to think, are you going to be a dickhead? Even in those really difficult times. And sometimes they could be, as I could be, but most of the time they weren't. So I just took the time and the effort. So that's what I mean. The CV got you in the door, but then it was about, let's actually get to know each other. And that meant a recruitment process may take a few weeks. It wasn't just, hey, let's have one coffee and you've got the job. It was like, you are coming into my permanent team. Are you going to work out? Where I learned that, I don't know. Maybe I nod back to my community upbringing. So when I was a kid, from the age of 8, I was out on my bike in Oxford, just being with my friends. And my family and community is hugely important to me. And in the sort of working class community, coming together and eating and getting 25 people in a living room and swapping stories and food, that was just normal for me as a young person. And also there's a big element of trust. You have to be able to build trust with people. And again, as they say, trust takes months to build and seconds to lose. And actually, in the 15 that we brought on, the trust was never broken. The other thing we did, which is a really, really positive thing for anyone who's had some success, is we created a 20% equity pot that was given to the team. So 20% of the business was given to them that they knew as something called sweet equity, which basically means that if you're in the business when it sells, you will get value. If you leave the business, you will not get value. So although we had these wonderful cultural values as an organization, and we didn't employ dickheads, we also gave shares to people so that if they were here at the exit event, they would get a life-changing amount of money. And what I'm so proud of is across those 15 people, through the deal that we did, we managed to create an 8-figure pot of money that went to that group. And some people who joined me like in year 2 of the business, and they were there right till I exited, they went on that journey with us. And they were able to do things like pay their mortgages off and go on holidays and get married finally and all those amazing things. So financial incentives do work, but you need also to make sure you hire the right people first.
I was speaking to a couple of my clients and we were speaking about having skin in the game.
Yes.
And it's not just managing the business, but owning that sweet equity that you were speaking about.
Yeah.
You will notice that they do that extra mile, that they will absolutely go above and beyond to make sure the company works. I'm not sure under what deals they are. Even if you do decide to sell later, then you know that you might have quite a good profit. But as you said, if you make sure that they stay until the exit event, then that amount can be life-changing.
Yeah.
And I think that makes them believe more in themselves as well. They think that they can do better. I do see that financial incentive working.
You've made them into entrepreneurs.
Yeah,
all of a sudden,
exactly.
all of a sudden they own businesses, and none of them went out of their way to be business owners. And the other thing I love about that team, diversity and inclusion initiatives was like, you cut me in half and I am like diversity and inclusion guy. That team of 15 people, without exception, was the most diverse board that the entire sector had. This sector is 100 billion turnover per year. Businesses are 300 times our size in our competitors. We were the most diverse. In terms of every different marginalized characteristic you could possibly imagine, it was in there. So as people in the business lower down looked up at the very top, any insecurities they had in themselves, they could see it in the leadership team. And I just wanted to make sure that there was no glass ceiling. Anybody, regardless of their background, as long as they worked hard enough and they were in the right zone, could get to the top. And that was so powerful for us because we didn't have to fake it. And when you're going to sell to companies like, say, Deliveroo or ASOS, they care about that because they care about what you're like as a team. What journey are you going on? Who are you bringing with you? What social initiatives are you bringing along? And it just worked so well for us. And that team of 15, that was almost our superpower. The creativity and the diversity of that team had not been seen in the sector before.
When we grow up, we have a certain circle of friends, especially to that environment, and they can affect our lives and our journey a lot more than we can imagine. How did you find your inspiration when you started your career? Did you find the right circles to get into? Did you have mentors?
I had a varied childhood. So before the age of 16, I would say I was a typical naughty boy, famously nearly murdered when I was 15. I got beaten up in a park in Oxford as well. So nearly lost my life because that was the environment that I was in. For me, when that all changed is when I got into sixth form. I didn't even know what university was when I was 16 because no one in my family had been before. But all of a sudden, all of my friends were going to go to university. So that shaped my view on what life was going to be around. And then what happened, I went to university and I managed to find a graduate scheme while I was there in my second year. And I got linked up with this small property management business, which is how I got into this sector in the first place. What worked really well for me, and this is really good advice, mentor other people. I've mentored probably 100 people in my time now. I would not change an hour of time that I spent with them. Predominantly, I mentored people under 35. And generally, they wanted to come to me because I have confidence and because I'd had a great growth journey up until that age. I promise you, sit and listen to someone at that age, especially young women in particular. Listen to their insecurities. Listen to what they're nervous about. You will feel it inside you as well. You will see your own insecurities in theirs. And actually, so I got so much out of mentoring other people, way more because I was too much of an upstart to go and listen to somebody else. So I was lucky. My life at 16 turned round in the right way and I fell in with the right people. And then I was able to go through life without a real mentor, but helping other people and listening to them and seeing my own insecurities in them was really powerful. And that helped me to work on myself way more than I could have done by being mentored by 100 other people themselves.
How did your first million felt like? And when you sold for 100, did that feel very different? Like, I want to see that comparison.
Yeah. Well, I'll talk in two terms. I remember the very first time we got paid by Bulgari Hotel, it was like a £43,000 invoice. I remember when the money turned up in the account at the very, very beginning, the first cash I ever received, I was like, yeah, this is real. Someone's actually given me money to be able to deliver services. And, you know, I've now sold genuinely £250 million of services myself and delivered them and had the cash in for those. So but I tell you, that first 43,000 compared to the next 250 million, that was the special one. That's how it just meant so much, because the risk that you take leaving your job, the hassle you go through starting up, the pressure of finding your first client, and then all of a sudden 40 odd grand turns up in the account. You're like, yes, this is good. We've done it. Now we use Here to Grow. As it got bigger and bigger and bigger, I focused on cash. So profitability was one thing, but cash was another. Because if you're not careful, as you get bigger, your working capital can become a real problem. And although you can win nice big clients, as I mentioned, if they're on 90-day payment terms, very quickly you can start running out of money. And I had this SLA myself that I wanted 5 payrolls within our bank account at any time. So if everything went wrong, we could pay the team 5 times before we had to shut the business down. That was just what was going on in my head. Now, we lived by that philosophy all the way through, and we ended up at sale with about 4 million of spare cash by the time we left. If anyone knows about selling businesses, as long as that cash is not being used for working capital on a yearly basis, you can take that out as part of the sale process and you only pay capital gains tax on it. So it's a really efficient way to take money out of the business, which we were able to do in 2021. So I think on my side, it was about, as you got bigger, I wasn't so concerned about those individual payments. And in the end, when you have loads of millions, it actually starts to become more of a hassle because you need to make sure you're getting the money in. Whereas the first time I got the money, I was like elated that anyone had even paid us. The other thing, and this is good advice for entrepreneurs, cash collection can become a real challenge. Getting customers to pay you. When you go into like tender processes or you pitch to customers, they will tell you they're relationship based, they support their suppliers, they'll be great on their side. Look, invariably they won't, and that is a really difficult lesson to learn in business. And to some degree, you go through these really long processes to sell services to them, and in our case, it was tens of millions of pounds of services. And then when they don't pay you, you're almost like, hey, come on, mate. Like we're slogging our heart out here to make it work for you. And all you need to do is pay us on time. We're doing a good job. And that can be difficult because then you start to strain relationships with customers. And as an entrepreneur, you've got this balance between you're trying to pay your mortgage and you're trying to make sure you don't upset the customer at the same time. That can be a really difficult balance. And it is important advice to find your balance in between those. In every contract we had, because our contracts would be 5 to 7 year in length, if a customer didn't pay on time, we were able to charge them like a 7% interest on the money that they hadn't paid. We didn't use it once in terms of actually getting the 7% back, but we did use it to threaten on several occasions. Because what we found is the people who were not paying our invoices, they didn't want to go to the CFO of their organization and go, I've got another 7% I now need to pay, and here's the signed contract. So we sort of use that as a little bit of a threat, but you have to do that in a nice way. And customer relationships will always be what's the most important. But then secondly, the cash collection and making sure you don't go bust is just absolutely key.
What is the real story about like the hardest days when you were building Pareto?
So there's one particular day that stands out. We'd found this new customer and a friend of our business had met them in a members club in London somewhere. So there's a members club coffee and they were starting a new charity. And the charity was basically like an art installation charity where different people would come and display their art. So we love this idea. Being like a social value driven business ourselves, we thought, yes, we want to support this team. So we did a load of work with them and we went and we helped them to fit out the space and we were running the space and helping do tenant projects for them, et cetera, et cetera. And then they stopped paying us. And we were like, okay, this is unusual. And we went and had a chat and they said, yeah, the money's coming. And then the money didn't come. And we got to a point where they owed us nearly £400,000. And we sent one of the team members round to the office because it was still running where they were. And as they walked in, they said, the bailiffs have just turned up. The whole thing's gone bust. And we lost £400,000 in one afternoon. And that was a day where we were just like, okay, there are no protections against that, by the way. You cannot buy an insurance policy against that. We made the wrong decision. We trusted somebody that we shouldn't have trusted. They were starting a new enterprise and we were helping them to do that. We believed in the vision of what they were doing. But yeah, 400K gone. And when you're making, say, 3 or 4 million pounds a year in profit, that just comes straight off the bottom line. There's nowhere to hide it. That was a hard day. It wasn't so much the money, forget the money. Money's money at the end of the day. We'd made the wrong decision as a business where we were too trustworthy with people and we'd taken a uncalculated risk that we hadn't managed as time had gone on. So that was the worst day. But look, bad things happen, right? It's okay. Bad things happen. Just don't do it again. Learn from those lessons. And every night I used to have this ritual, which would either take 15 minutes or half an hour. I just have a notepad. I put all my tech away. I just have a notepad and I just write down the bad things. So what lessons have we learned today? What mistakes were we not going to make again? And I'd spend some time just flicking back over the last few pages just to try and make sure we didn't make those same mistakes again. So, I mean, look, that was nearly a whole notebook on that one, just in terms of what not to do. But that was the worst day.
Speaking of money, how do you want your kids to understand money, considering how differently they are being brought up compared to your own childhood?
Yeah. I really consider kids as like my main aspect of life now and really as part of my legacy with them. I don't want my kids to grow up knowing that they have money. And that's almost like the process that we've been through. My son is 4 now and we never discuss money. But only this week he came back to me and he said, Papa, someone at school told me you're rich. And I was like, this is a really interesting conversation, Luca, because firstly, you don't know that yourself. So I'm really happy that you don't know that yet. And secondly, what are all the mums talking about at school that means that we're having this conversation now? So I see it almost as my life's work in terms of what I leave behind, that we don't bring up entitled children into this world. Now, the reason I bought a farm over in Oxfordshire is because I want them to live a life outside. I want them to be enjoying nature. I want them to pick berries off the tree and make jam. I want them to plant their own carrots and eat them. I want them to understand that life is more than just that phone that you're going to hold in your hand. And I also want them to understand that, yes, we will leave the money behind, but I only want to do that if they're going to go and follow their dreams. And they're probably in a very, very fortunate position as 2 kids that they can go and do whatever they like in terms of following their dreams, and we will be there as a safety net. Now, what I hope that means is, let's just say they want to go into a low-pay career. Say they want to go and be a nurse and actually save the world from being a nurse, but they really can't afford to live on a nurse's salary because they don't get paid enough. But we can help them. We can top them up and they can go and do something. Or maybe they want to go and be an artist or a singer or a photographer, all those things that it's hard to really make money out of, but they know the safety net is there. So my goal really is to try and bring them up in a way where they want to do those things, they have ambition, and they know that money is a safety net, but it's not the answer. I want them to go out and be independent people. My daughter is 6. I already believe she can be prime minister. She is stubborn enough to be able to do it. And I'm teaching her all of the learnings that I can very early. She's incredibly gifted at maths and English already. And so I have huge ambitions for them. But I'm also aware I cannot put my own ambitions for myself back onto my children. They need to do it in a way that they're going to love. And when I ask my kids what they want to do at the moment, they have about 5 or 6 jobs each that they want to do at the same time. And actually, a lot of them don't make very much money. So that's good from that perspective. I would hate it if my kids got to 18 years old, became cocaine addicts, became really entitled, and just sort of thought that life was easy for them. I want them to work hard, and we live that every day with them now.
If you could give some tips to people that are starting a business or they are in their first couple of years, you got Pareto way ahead of its competition. And what is one outside-the-box move that brands could do to differentiate themselves in the market?
This might sound really obvious, but I think personal brand of the entrepreneur is a really important aspect of being outside the box. What I mean by that is you need to just be out there. People need to know about you as an individual, not necessarily what your services are, but they need to know about you. So by that, I mean, go to every networking event that you can within your sector, write in the industry magazine all the time. Try and get articles out there around your business and everything that you're doing. Try and create stories about yourself that people know you for those stories. as opposed to trying to sell them services. So, and when you go to networking events, don't go and chat to someone to sell them services. Go to chat to someone because you want to talk to them about what's going on in their life. What football team do they support? What are their insecurities? What doesn't work? So for me, what really worked in the 6 years before I started Pareto, I was just out all the time, building a brand for myself. I didn't know that was going to be so helpful to me when I actually started up. But then when I was calling these major brands and saying, hey, I would like to deliver services to you, firstly, it wasn't cold because I had a name in the sector, so people had probably heard of me. And secondly, I'd likely met these people before at some sort of networking event capacity, or they'd read an article that I'd written or whatever. So it wasn't a completely cold like LinkedIn message saying, hey, here I am. I can tell you now, I did not sell a single pound of the 250 million via LinkedIn messaging somebody, not a single pound. Entirely, I would call it relationship-based marketing. But for relationship-based marketing to work, you have to be out there. Now, if there's a few of you, then great, fantastic. Divide and conquer. Go and be out there and do lots of it. But I was relentless. I was everywhere. And you could not move in the property services sector without seeing me and creating that personal brand in a really positive way. The other thing that's slightly outside the box that worked for us is being a social-led business. Many businesses out there are not good businesses. They don't treat people very well. They don't do nice initiatives. You don't have to do many good things to stand out, to be above other people. Very quick story for you, one that was so powerful for us. One of our team was a mum, and her daughter played for like the under-8s football team. They couldn't afford their own football kit. They used to borrow the boys' kit unwashed to play their football games. And I was like, what, you're 8-year-old girls wearing 8-year-old boys' sweaty, unwashed football kit? This is disgusting. And also, this isn't helping young women in terms of into the future and in sport and everything. So I said, how much is a new kit? They're like £300. I was like, great, buy two. Like, this is something that we absolutely should be doing. And then we got Pareto put on the front of the kit. And then they let us take a few pictures of them that we could use in the socials. The fact wasn't that we had put our brand on a football kit. It was a fact that we'd listened to one of our team. We understood that these young women were having to wear sweaty clothes when they were playing football, and we wanted to do something about it. For 300 quid, I had a story that I could tell to everybody that would listen. And in the target marketing I was trying to do with certain organizations, that story would resonate with them. So it doesn't have to be expensive. It just needs to be innovative, and you just need to be out there. And like, just go to a networking event and create the chance for luck to happen that you met somebody there. It really worked, and it didn't cost us very much money at all.
Being visible, being out there, working a lot on your personal brand is something that we're always trying to tell our clients as well. And although it used to be something that you didn't need so much back in the past because you would build a reputation of your business and that would work, now I think we're really transitioning to a personal-led business model that will show a lot more success than anyone else. And people that have started doing that earlier days, they already see this competitive advantage. You often speak about breaking the industry rules. What rule did you break that actually made you the most amount of money?
This is going to sound really low level, but it was donuts.
What?
It's all about donuts. So look, I love food and I love donuts, and I never met anybody who doesn't love donuts, by the way. So don't tell me you don't love donuts, because you'll be my first. What I mean by donuts is I really mean food and the connection between food and people. So every single time, without exception, if we went to a sales pitch with a customer, we would get branded donuts made up. Now, this is like early days of Crosstown and Donut Time, where you could print their logo onto a donut. And the additional trick was always getting a vegan option and a gluten-free option. I promise you, you walk into a room with a tray of donuts, selling property services like we were, no one else is doing that. So firstly, only me, right? That's my unique selling point. I've got you some donuts. Secondly, if there happens to be dairy-free or gluten intolerant on the other side of the table, and you have thought about their needs before they've even asked you, before they even knew you were bringing donuts, and all of a sudden you have a vegan one that they can eat, you can delight people before you've even met them. And sometimes, because we would tender against other businesses all the time. So it'd be us plus maybe 7 other companies all vying for the same work at the same time. So I was always trying to think, what's the little 1% thing I can do that when I leave that room, they're still thinking about me? And donuts was the answer. Donuts was also the answer with our team. So in 2019, we spent £25,000 on donuts in 1 year, and that's absolutely true. This is true. I had donut companies calling me and said, I've got your number. I hear you spend a lot on donuts. Can I be your official donut provider? Which we never took anyone up on. Now, I go back to my community roots and like breaking bread together and eating together on a Sunday. If I was to walk into a site and there was maybe 20 team members there, if I walk in and I just go straight to see the senior team and nobody else, that makes me a certain type of leader. If I walk in with a big tray of donuts and I go to the workshop where everybody is and I sit and eat food with them, that makes me a completely different leader. And the loyalty and the connection you can build with people at all levels is all done through this one sugary snack. So sounds really simple, but like find your donut. Like what is it that you are going to do that's different? And this is the final piece of advice on this. It works on every level when you flatter someone. Flattery works on every level. There's nothing else to say. Doesn't matter how small, how big, what time, who you say it to, what level, flattery works. Always flatter people in some way. Now, the way I would do that is, let's say we went to tender for a client organization that we wanted to work with. When I went in there, I'd be like, look, can I just say to begin, we are so privileged to even be here in the room with you. We have admired your brand for the last 10 years. When I started Pareto, you were the customer that I wanted to find. It is unbelievable that I find myself in this room. Please eat a donut with your logo on it whilst we have this conversation. Now, you see how powerful that is. Whether I even know who the customer is, who cares? Because actually, it's just about trying to make them feel like the most important person in the room. And you've thought about them in terms of other ways that you can connect with them on a more human level. I didn't go in and sell property maintenance services. I went in to sell a relationship together and a journey with each other, and it just worked. And it all comes back to donuts. So find your own thing that you can get branded. Use flattery in the right way. You have to mean it because you can't be insincere, but do it every time. Consistency, consistency, consistency. So I tell this story a lot about donuts. Someone was trying to sell to me, okay? The first time I met them, they brought me a donut. Okay, nice. You've listened to what I said. I met them 3 more times since then. No more donuts. Now, your donuts are superficial. I want donuts every time that we meet. And actually, I don't because I'm on a diet. But the consistency piece. So then, of course, when we met the clients the first time and they had the donut tray, well, when we met them the second time, what was I going to do to delight them then? Well, I knew them better the second time round. What else was important to them? So I'd always then try and go away and almost romantically think about what could I do to delight them next time. And I ended up doing like getting umbrellas made, getting bug houses made, custom sanitary towels. Like literally was everything that we could think of that was going to create a connection with them. And that's the one thing that we did.
What is the best decision that you've taken, personal or professional, that no one understood at the time?
Yeah, this is a really specific one. I really wanted to give big bonuses to like low-level staff in the business. So I came up with this idea that if you introduced us to a new customer that was over £200,000 contract per year, we would give you a £10,000 check. Now, in a sector where sometimes people's salaries were, say, £30,000, £10,000 check was like life-changing. And I went to the board and they said, no, this is a stupid idea. Firstly, £10,000 is too much. And also, no one's ever going to bring you £200,000 worth of business. It happened twice. And we wrote 2 checks. And some of the proudest photos I have is one guy was called Nick. Another woman was called Emma that won these £10,000 checks. And Nick is just laid down like this on the side with this £10,000 comedy check that we got made behind him with his team around him. And those contracts went on to deliver probably £10 million of revenue to the business. And all it cost me was 20K. Now, I ask any entrepreneur out there, for £20,000, would you want 10 million of revenue to come back in? Clearly, the answer is yes. With zero effort from us, by the way, because the customers are the ones that brought them in. The staff were the ones that brought them in. So, yeah, for me, easiest decision I ever made. Actually, the board tried to say no at the time. And I was like, no, I'm going to do this anyway. Like, this is my business. I'm going to do it anyway. And yeah, it happened twice. That isn't around any longer, that deal. But for those 2 people, Emma and Nick, it changed their life. And Nick in particular, he was able to pay some debt off and get himself back to a really great position. He was really open. I think Emma went to Disneyland with it, like Disneyland Orlando. So, yeah, it was an amazing thing. But originally, people said no.
If you could teach one principle to someone that doesn't come from wealth, but they really want to change their lives, what would you say?
I think for me, for someone who doesn't come from wealth, I'd say stop looking online and dreaming like other people have already achieved it when they haven't. Is when you don't have anything, it's really easy to sort of look up at other people. The other thing I'd say is wealth is not the answer to all the problems in life. And I sit here on the other side now as very fortunately a multimillionaire who doesn't have to worry about money now. It doesn't mean it's any easier to, be at home and have a great relationship with your wife. Yes, maybe you don't have to go to work any longer, which makes things easier, but it doesn't make emotional connections easier. Doesn't mean that when your kids do something bad, it doesn't still really annoy you and you tell them off and you go a little bit further than you should do and you feel bad about it afterwards. Money gives you time back, which is fantastic, but it doesn't necessarily solve all those problems that you have on a day-to-day basis. You still have to work really hard on relationships, certainly in marriage and kids and family. And even now, like one of the things I sacrificed quite early was my friends. When my friends were saying, hey, come to London and do this, and I was in the middle of work, they were the easiest no. I was like, sorry, guys, I can't. Firstly, I can't come and get drunk because I'm doing this. I can't be hungover tomorrow because I'm doing this. I just need to be focused. I'm really sorry. I am now working really hard on going back and rebuilding those relationships with my friends.
So play a scenario for me. You're in your 30s. You realize that you build something acquirable. Talk me through the next steps. How does one prepare their company for an exit?
Yeah, that's actually a really deep conversation to have. When you start, you don't know what success looks like, or I certainly didn't. I didn't have a real number. You start realizing that, okay, we've been going for 5-6 years. The profitability is going up. We were making a couple of £1 million a year profit at that stage. So we just went out and said, okay, we're not necessarily ready to sell, but let's just go and have a look that if we were going to sell, would anyone be interested? How much money would they give us? And you just sort of start having conversations with each other within the senior team. Like, are you ready? Do you think this is something we should do? So what you tend to do is you go and appoint a corporate advisor. So we just had those tentative conversations with each other. We went to corporate advisors and they said, look, you have a valuable business here and we know people will be interested in investing in your business. And that's how it started. And then we started meeting private equity companies. So typically private equity want to buy in and go on a journey with you and then exit again. And they hope that obviously they put money in and take more money out at the end. We had bigger companies that were interested in buying us. So competitors were interested. We weren't quite ready to do that yet because it was still quite early and I still wanted to go on a bit more of a growth curve with it. So yeah, I think it really just begins with a conversation with yourself, but you need to have some profitability first. I think when we got past a couple of million profit, we thought now's the time just to go and have a look. And that's how it started for us. But you need advice, like corporate advisors, go and find one that you trust. Because when I was going through the deal, I could do a whole hour on how you sell a business because that is a really deep process. I was speaking to my corporate advisors 10:30 every night for probably 2 months. And I did a stupid thing. I'd order a takeaway at 10 o'clock and have like an Indian meal delivered. And then I'd chat to Fardeen, our advisor. And I was up till midnight for like 2 months in a row and just not sleeping enough.
If someone would hand you now a business to take it to market, to scale it, prep before exit, what is the first things that you would do?
I'd actually go back to what I said about personal brand. The first thing I would do is get everyone in that senior team out and start building a brand for them, because the market almost needs to feel like this business is going to sell at some point before it knows it's going to sell, if that makes sense. You need people out there telling the story of the growth, the journey, what's so good about the business. And let's just say a senior team is 5 or so people, depending on the business type. Get them all out there and get them all working towards trying to grow this story. And the story I always told was a story of growth. So if a business, firstly, you need to really focus on the finances to make sure that it is going to continue to grow. You need to make decisions that make that happen, even like stripping out overhead in the right areas so profitability starts to grow. But get your team out there. Get your team out there telling the sector. When we were ready to sell, we had, like I said, big companies coming to us. We weren't even going to them. They were coming to us because they were like, we want a bite of this cherry now before anybody else gets access to it. And in the time across the deals we did, we had about 15 offers for the business, but only because people knew we were potentially ready and that we'd created enough noise and told the story around growth. Just the other one I would do, which worked really well for us, is awards. Go out there and apply for awards. So in my time now, we're approaching 50 awards that we've won. Awards help you externally tell the story and they externally validate what you're saying. And look, there are some crap awards out there that you can buy for like 600 quid and they look great when they're mixed in with lots of other things. But if you can get other people to say you're good enough, using that to tell customers that story and tell potential investors that story, it's just a great place to start. And actually, it doesn't cost very much money. And like the Lloyd's Business Awards, the Great British Entrepreneurship Awards, the Great British Industry Awards, whatever your sector awards are, go and have a look and have a go. I promise you, you'll be surprised. You'll probably win something. And that is a great way to just tell the story of what you're going to do into the future.
What's the most overrated business advice that you ever heard?
The most overrated is that anybody can do it. I think anybody can start a business, but they have to have the right mindset. So not just anybody, those with the right mindset can do it.
What's the most controversial opinion about money?
That you need money to be happy. Money doesn't bring you happiness. Time brings you happiness.
What's the most underrated skill that no one talks about?
Empathy for people on the other side. People want to be treated like they want to be treated, not how you want to be treated. You need to learn that very early in sales.
What's the most expensive mistake that you've ever done?
Trusting someone with a new contract and costing ourselves nearly £400,000.
If you've lost everything tomorrow, what's the first thing that you would do?
Network.
Biggest lie entrepreneurs tell themselves?
Oh, that one day they're going to stop.
What is the best habit that you developed while building a business?
Waking up early and just getting on with the day before anybody else had woken up.
What does business alchemy mean to you?
I think it's about taking something that's ordinary and making it extraordinary. I think all of us are ordinary people, but we can have extraordinary outcomes. You can do it.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you so much.